Tokyo, 1989. The grounds beneath the Imperial Palace are worth more than every acre of real estate in California. 9 of the 10 largest banks on Earth fly the Japanese flag. Salarymen buy paintings for $40 million. Then the bubble bursts, and Japan does not recover. It enters an experiment no nation has ever run before. 35 years of an economy that refuses to die but cannot grow. Most people think Japan was the exception. They have it backwards. Japan was the prototype, and every developed economy is now following its blueprint. To understand what broke, you have to understand what swelled. By 1989, the Nikkei had quadrupled in 7 years. Japanese banks had financed everything. Golf course memberships traded like sovereign bonds. Land prices defied arithmetic. The Ministry of Finance encouraged it. The Bank of Japan tolerated it. Western economists wrote books predicting Japan would surpass America by 2000. The yen was untouchable. The factories were unmatched. The savings rate was extraordinary. Japan had built, in 40 years, the most efficient industrial machine in human history. And it was about to discover that efficiency cannot save you from demographics. The bubble did not pop. It deflated, slowly, like a wound that would not close. The Nikkei peaked at 38,915 in December 1989. Within 3 years it had lost half its value. Land prices followed. Then banks, then confidence. The numbers were staggering. An estimated $15 trillion of wealth vaporized. But the deeper damage was hidden. Japan's working-age population peaked in 1995 and began to shrink. The country that had stunned the world with productivity now faced a force no central bank could counter. It was running out of workers, it was running out of consumers. The Ministry of Finance did what every government does. It spent. Bridges were built to islands no one lived on. Tunnels were dug under mountains no one crossed. Public debt climbed past 100% of GDP, then 150%, then 200%. The economy did not respond. Prices stopped rising. Then prices began falling. Wages froze. Companies hoarded cash instead of investing. Households hoarded cash instead of spending. A new word entered the global lexicon: deflation, and Japan became its case study. By 1998, the orthodoxy had failed. The textbooks had failed. Someone had to invent a new economics in real time. That someone was Masaru Hayami. He took office as governor of the Bank of Japan in March 1998. He was 72 years old. He was a believer in sound money, hard discipline, and the moral authority of a strong yen. He was, by every instinct, the wrong man for what was about to be asked of him. Hayami had spent his career inside the bank. He had watched the bubble inflate. He had watched it collapse. He believed deeply that low interest rates were a poison, that they punished savers, propped up zombies, and corroded the discipline of capitalism itself. But the data was merciless. Prices were falling. Banks were insolvent in everything but name. The long-term Credit Bank of Japan failed that autumn. Nippon Credit Bank followed weeks later. Unemployment was climbing for the first time in post-war memory. The Diet pressured him. The Ministry of Finance pressured him. The IMF watched. Hayami resisted. He gave speeches warning that ultra-low rates would damage the economy's long-term health. He warned about moral hazard. He warned about distorted markets. He was right about all of it, and it did not matter. On February 12, 1999, Masaru Hayami crossed a line no central banker in modern history had ever crossed. The Bank of Japan cut its policy rate to 0, not near 0, 0. The press conference was muted. Hayami's language was careful, almost apologetic. He framed it as temporary, exceptional, a measure to be lifted as soon as conditions allowed. He did not believe in what he was doing. He did it anyway, because nothing else had worked, because deflation was hardening into expectation, because a central banker, faced with a structural problem, had only monetary tools, and he used them. It did not work. Prices kept falling. Hayami tried to lift the rate in August 2000, a small increase, an act of conviction. Within months, the economy weakened further. He had been right in theory, wrong in timing. Markets punished him. The government rebuked him. By March 2001, he was forced to go further than 0. The Bank of Japan announced it would begin purchasing government bonds directly, expanding the monetary base by sheer creation of yen. The world had a new term for it: quantitative easing. Hayami had invented it. He despised it. He authorized it anyway. What Hayami built between 1999 and 2003 was not policy. It was improvisation under fire, zero rates, bond purchases, forward guidance. Each tool invented to plug a hole, the last tool failed to seal. He retired in 2003, exhausted, his orthodoxy in ruins. He had spent 5 years doing what he believed was wrong because the alternative was worse. He had also, without intending to, written the operating manual for every central bank that would face the same crisis a decade later. The Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, they would all reach for his playbook. 2008, Lehman Brothers collapses. Within months, the Federal Reserve cuts rates to zero. Within a year, it begins quantitative easing. The European Central Bank follows. The Bank of England follows. By 2016, the ECB is below zero. Negative interest rates, charging banks to hold money. Every tool was Japanese. Every justification was familiar. Every official insisted their situation was different, that they would normalize quickly, that they would never become Japan. They became Japan. The footprints had been laid in 1999. The rest of the developed world walked into them, one country at a time, swearing they were not. The pattern was identical because the disease was identical. Aging populations, falling birth rates, rising debt, stagnant productivity. A demographic ceiling no monetary tool could lift. America's working-age population growth collapsed after 2008. Europe's had collapsed earlier. China's peaked in 2015. Each economy reached for the same playbook because each was developing the same condition. Central banks were not solving a crisis, they were managing a decline, and the tools they used, Hayami's tools, were not designed to restore growth. They were designed to prevent collapse. There is a difference. The difference is everything. By 2024, Japan's debt to GDP exceeded 260%, the highest ratio in the developed world. The Bank of Japan owns more than half of all Japanese government bonds. The yen has weakened to levels not seen in 40 years. And still, there is no inflation crisis, no default, no collapse. Japan has proven something the textbooks said was impossible. A wealthy, aging, debt-saturated economy can persist for decades in a state of suspended animation. It cannot grow. It will not die. It simply continues, year after year, running the experiment everyone else is now running. Masaru Hayami died in 2009. He never reconciled himself to what he had done. In his final interviews, he expressed quiet regret, not about specific decisions, but about the world they had created, a world where central banks owned their own government's debt, a world where savers earned nothing, a world where the price of money had been abolished. He had warned about all of it. He had also been the man who began it. The tragedy was not his alone. It belonged to a generation of central bankers who inherited a problem no economic theory had prepared them for. Japan was not the exception. Japan was the warning. Different demographics, different decade, different flag, same trap. The Imperial Palace grounds are no longer worth California. The Nikkei has only recently recovered its 1989 peak, 35 years later. And every developed economy now carries the same debts, the same aging populations, the same exhausted toolkit invented by a reluctant old man in Tokyo. Hayami knew what he was building. He built it anyway. The only question left is whether the rest of the world noticed the footprints in time. The evidence suggests they did not.